gonna call? Someone else.
Halloween may be over for another year.
Pleasure to meet you, sir.
So why are we still out chasing ghosts? Ghosts that may be impacting your vote in Harris County elections. This is the San Jacinto Monument, where Texas independence was won. The tourists still come here to relive Sam Houston's triumph, but no one lives on the monument grounds, so there are no voters. But the park surrounding the monument in eastern Harris County shows up as a voting precinct, 1014, in our election last November. And the vote turnout was, of course, 0. And it will be 0 after the mayor's vote this week. Then there's precinct 1066. On the map, it looks like every other election precinct, but when you put an aerial view on top of precinct 1066, look, you can clearly see it's just a stretch of highway. No homes here, and certainly no voters. Drive down Westheimer between Highway 6 and Eldridge. Yep, right in the middle of the street, it's another political precinct.
Of these particular 0 population precincts, they're in extremely odd places.
You remember Russ Long. He's the engineer that produced a heat map this year showing ballot paper shortages were strangely concentrated in areas considered Republican strongholds.
Somebody get me the Ghostbusters.
Now Russ is back with a new discovery, what we're calling ghost precincts, with no voters.
The city is headed for a disaster of biblical proportion.
And we checked across the country, and it turns out this has happened in other places too. Check out this TV story from Kentucky.
Call them ghost precincts because there's nobody living in there, there's no houses.
There were just a couple of ghost precincts in Kentucky, but here for some reason, there are 66 political precincts with no registered voters, more than ever before. Little chunks of land left over after redistricting maps were redrawn.
Looks like a string of pearls, these vacant precincts all running down the bayou.
We're right along Gray's Bayou just past Maine. Take a look down there in the water. Harris County says that's a political precinct. Obviously no one votes there. Weird, right? But you may be asking, if no one's voting in these political precincts, why are Republicans crying foul?
This is an indicator of intent to disenfranchise Republican voters.
Here's why Long calls this another example of Republican voter suppression. Historically, the party split of political precincts would mirror the result of the governor's race.
So Governor Abbott, he is the winner over Beto O'Rourke.
In the 2022 election, Greg Abbott won the governor's race, but won only 44.5% of the votes cast here in Harris County. But Republicans ended up with just 31% of the Republican precinct judges in this county.
That's a full 13% power shift to the Democrat favor.
That's because the Harris County Elections Administrator decided that all of these ghost precincts, the ones with no voters in them, well, they were actually tied on Election Day and awarded all the ties, every single one of them, to the Democrats, meaning they get to have more election judges controlling the voting process.
You can't have a tie when nobody votes, okay? 0 population, uninhabited, so it's impossible to be a tie.
I think it's just very patently unfair.
Sonia Aston used to run elections in Harris County. Now she's an expert for the Harris County Republican Party.
The Democrats now have 11 more polls where Democrat judges are going to be running them as opposed to Republicans.
The Republicans have compiled a list of Democratic precinct judges they accuse of violating election law, skirting the rules to make sure that only eligible people vote. They even have a nickname for them, the Dirty 30. Now you can add Democratic ghost precincts to the growing complaints that Harris County elections are simply unfair because of games being played by Lena Hidalgo and the crew, like the still unanswered question about the ballot paper shortages, or the Baker Ripley problems that helped the Democrats get an extra hour of voting, or the failure to stop dead people from signing up for mail-in ballots, or the refusal to take felons off the voting rolls, or folks who don't live here anymore.
In Harris County, the problem we have is it's a death by 1,000 cuts. There's a little bit being taken off here, a little bit taken off there.
Take the locations of polls. We have countywide voting, but the numbers don't add up. Rodney Ellis, he's the commissioner of Precinct 1. 668,000 registered voters. The only Republican on Commissioner's Court is Tom Ramsey in Precinct 3. He has 753,000 registered voters, 85,000 more voters than Ellis has. In Precinct 3, there are 179 polls. Precinct 1 has 193 places to vote.
It becomes really clear that this was intentional, that they created these postage-sized precincts in order to increase the precinct count for the Democrat side.
We'll be watching as the mayor's race heads to a runoff.
And it's too late to really do something about this election. What we need to do is make sure it's fixed for upcoming elections.
A preliminary audit by the Secretary of State has already confirmed what we've been trying to tell you since last year. The November 22 election was a mess. Quoting, Harris County clearly had multiple failures conducting the election and violated election law. Now it's time for the Secretary of State to, do something about it. Tell the Democrats that 0 isn't a tie.
Back off, man. I'm a scientist.
I say it's time to get rid of the ghost.
I love this town!